So our next speaker is James Erler. And James has been the Forestry and Wildland Fire Department Director for the Yurok tribe since January 2012. He is responsible for the management and other activities on 63,000 acres of tribal land. Management activities include timber harvests, hazard fuel projects, wildland fire operations, forest development, and the oversight of forest carbon projects. He holds a BS degree in forest management from Humboldt State University and is a California registered professional forester. His previous experience includes 8 years as the owner of a forestry consulting firm and work with the California Department of Forestry as a forest practice inspector, watershed assessment forester, and a battalion chief. He is currently providing oversight in the development of the Yurok tribe's third forest carbon project. Let's give it up for Jim.
Well, thank you, Brian. And before I get started, I would just like to thank ITC for inviting us, the Yurok tribe, to come and share our experience with forest carbon projects with the rest of the ITC membership, and hopefully we'll all have something to really take and get a good discussion going about forest carbon projects. When I was first asked to present here, I'm the executive officer for the tribe and legal staff, and some other folks got wind of this, and so they called me aside one day and said, what are you going to talk about at ITC? And I said, well, the best thing that we could do is have a frank, upfront discussion about our projects, the pitfalls that we've had. Oh, that's good. I like that. Uh-oh. And some of just what we've encouraged so that other tribes don't fall into those same kind of pitfalls, and they know what to expect when they get started into this program. Because it can be a long, rocky road when you start down these forest carbon project trails. So that's maybe we'll look at something. Yeah. Well, while Brian figures that out, the tribe has 3 projects. 2 of them are approved and verified, and we have sold credits on. The third one we are currently working on in the development phase to get it registered, hopefully within the next 6 months. So, ooh. It looks good here, but it doesn't work up there. The first project was.
Sorry.
It's okay. We'll wing it. The first project was developed. It's 21,000 acres, and it's based on, and it's on fee land, and it was part of a condition. Great. The first project, what we call the phase 1 project, and it is 21,128 acres. It was with an estimated carbon stocks of 1,300,000 tons. And I just used isocarbon out there, but technically carbon is measured in tons of CO2 equivalent. That's what and 1 ton of CO2 equivalent is equal to a credit. So when I just say carbon, we're talking about carbon credits. Is 1 ton of CO2 equivalent, because it's kind of wordy. The initial credit sale for this project was in August 2013, and it was developed under Climate Action Reserve protocols. And right now we're currently in the process of switching that project over to ARB protocols. It works out to our advantage because the other project was developed under ARB, and so rather than having 2 projects and you have apples and oranges, now we've got all apples. And we can mix some of our credits and transfer them between accounts, so it works out better for the advantage to the tribe. The second project is what I call the CKGG. That is not any kind of Yurok word. It simply stands for Cook, Kapala, Gerber, Gleason. This was the name of the folks that owned the property when the tribe bought it back in 1998. And the acronym kind of stuck, and now it's the official name for the project. It's 7,408 acres. It has 846,000 tons of credits that have been issued. And it's developed under, its initial sale was in 2014. And it was developed under ARB protocols. The third project, as I'll just mention briefly, it's what we call a phase 2 project, and it's going to be about 25,000 acres. And we're currently working on it. And this just shows a map of the three projects in a relative location to each other. You can see that on the west side of the map there, the blue line, that's the Klamath River. The yellow boundary is the reservation boundary. And as you can see, these projects, a lot of it is outside the reservation. It's on fee lands that the tribe owns or in the process of purchasing. The phase 2 project is at the top of the map in the kind of the salmon colored. The green is the phase 1 project, and Cook Kapala, the smaller project, is in kind of the purple. What we need to understand, because this impacts it's not just our projects, but it's an understanding we need to talk about business as usual. And some folks talked about it as the implications for management plans and what applies to the project that's in your management plan. But the bottom line is that anything that's a legal constraint on the property before the project is initiated is going to apply. Things like, whatever's in your management plan, safe harbor agreements, water course protection zones, resource management zones, conservation areas, RMZs. A good example that I like to use, and it impacts projects significantly, is water course protection zones. This is just a map showing the Cook and Kapala project, CKGG, and the stream protection zones that are required. These are 100-foot zones, and it totals 678 acres. Is that right? Yeah, 87. Can't read my own maps. But this is a 100-foot buffer on each side of the stream that we're required to have as part of, standard practice, business as usual. Although it may be a part of the project, the credits that are growing on those areas cannot be counted towards your net credit issuance. So you got to remember, look at your real estate. How much of this zone are we going to have? It can eat up a lot of ground. Another one that I just hate to even talk about, but it's reality, is northern spotted owl activity centers. This is a known activity center. It's been around on the maps for a long time, and it impacts part of the phase 1 property when you got a nest site and a 1.3 mile circle around that site. That area cannot be counted. It doesn't get, you can get inventory it can be part of the gross project, but as a net, the credits won't be issued for that area. So what we did here was we just deleted that area from the whole project entirely. And then we went and cut down the tree. Well, the tree was actually on trust property, and so it got in the way of a timber sale. Fish and Wildlife Service gave us a take permit for it, so we were clean. Project development. How are you going to develop these things? And there's two different ways to do it. The tribe has done it both ways. We have a preference, and I'll get to that probably at the end. But the phase 1 project, the big project, is what we call self-developed. The tribe took it on themselves. The advantages to that, well, let me start. Let's go back to then. The CKGG project was developed by an outside developer. In fact, they're here today if you want to talk to them. Actually, they're a pretty good company to work with. But we just want to compare and contrast the two. It's hard to, you just have to feel comfortable with whichever system you want to go with. You want to do it yourself, you got to be prepared to fork out some high dollars. The previous speaker talked about some of those costs, and I think he was a little underestimating some of those costs. You might figure on, in reality, about 25% of your credit issuance is going to have to go to pay for the project cost development. So if you've got $2 million worth of credits that you're hoping to sell, well, $500,000 is going to have to pay for the project, and that's pretty close. You might be able to cut that down a little bit with some things, but there's a lot of costs involved. Be prepared for just to be overwhelmed with little fees here and there. And self-development also takes in a lot of high staff hours. During the 2013, before we got this thing registered, the tribal attorney and myself, we spent a lot of time dealing with issues with the folks that we had contracted with to do the modeling, and then with report writing, a lot of phone calls, a lot of data that had to be worked out, a lot of staff time. So it's not something that you can just sign on the dotted line and expect it to happen. As opposed to outside development, they do everything. And if you get a good company, like we did, they give you the Cadillac version, they do a good job. But they do it all. And it makes it nice. But on the other hand, they take about 25% of the credits. Depending on the company, there are different percentages, but they keep a part of the credits as their fee for doing that project. Also, when you develop it yourself, you have control of the sales. Outside developers generally, with their contracts, they maintain control of the sales for a certain number of years. And then if you develop it yourself, you're responsible for all the paperwork, and there is a lot. There's annual reports, there's verification reports, there's, oops, we did this report, there's emails from ARB asking about things. It takes a lot of time. And we're starting to gear up for managing all these projects ourselves, so it's going to take us one full-time person to just deal with our carbon projects and everything involved. I thought I had somebody on board that could do that, and we sent him to school to learn how to model and do all that report writing, and then he got a better offer. So we're back to square one. And then the nice thing I like about the outside development folks is they do it all. They don't have to. They don't even have to bother you telling you what they're doing. It's in their contract. They just do it. They started doing the inventory on the CKGG project, and I didn't even know what was going on until I got a phone call one morning saying, "Hey, I need a key to the gate so we can go in and measure your carbon plots." So it's kind of just, these are all relative things, but it's stuff to consider. How much time you want to spend, who do you want to hire? Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty of them and talk about the project comparison, because there's physical differences between these two projects, and you wouldn't think there would be, but you need to be aware that, gosh, things can change, and we don't have any control over most of it. The phase one is 21,000 acres with estimated carbon stocks of 1,300,000 tons. Growth is 69,000 tons per year for the whole project, which comes out to 3.62 tons per acre per year of growth of carbon sequestration. And mostly it's Douglas fir with kind of a mixed hardwood forest type. And there's 120 inventory plots on that project. The CKGG project is 7,408 acres with estimated carbon stocks of 846,390 tons. That's about 114 tons per acre, with growth of 36,000 and a growth of 4.96 tons per acre per year. So look at those two numbers of growth per acre per year and ask yourself, why the difference? Because if you look at the map, they're close proximity. In fact, in some areas, some of the blocks, they're next to each other. But the CKGG project is mostly tan oak with mixed hardwoods and fir in the understory. And it has 679 plots. Like, wow. So really, if you look at this, there's 3 factors that make a difference between these projects, or with any project for that matter. One is the location, the vegetation, and the inventory. Location, I'm not talking about the position on a slope or aspect or elevation. We're talking which carbon supersection is it located in. As we talked about earlier, all these biomass equations and models are based on specific FIA data from each supersection. And each one is going to be different. We had the distinct pleasure of having our supersection boundary run right down through the middle of the project. So as you can see from the big black line, it's a difference between the Northern California coast supersection and the what is it called? What is it? Oh. Yeah, Southern Cascades. They use different baseline models, different information to model that biomass in those projects, and it's going to make a difference. You can take the same inventory data and apply it to the California coast supersection. It doesn't come out with the same numbers as you do if you cross the street into the next supersection. Vegetation may be the same, but it changes. So be aware of where is that project. And I don't know who laid these out, but they're complicated. This is just a map of the northwestern supersection areas. They're kind of complicated. So you could end up with a project with, a boundary right through the middle of it, and it's going to impact it. And it impacts modeling too, of how you're going to model a project. So I want to move on to just talk about vegetation, because it can make a big difference. Like I said here, vegetation is where it's at. The younger, the better, to a certain point. Like was just discussed earlier, when you do your inventory, you only inventory those stems that are 5 inches and larger. So if you got really young, small reproduction, it doesn't necessarily get counted. But you look at the species, because this biomass equation is based on the weight of the wood, the specific gravity, the pounds per cubic foot, so to speak. So like the Kunkapala, the CKGG project has 60% tan oak and hardwoods by basal area. So it's got a lot of heavy biomass, which is good if you're growing carbon. And the phase 1 project, it only has 28% hardwoods. So there's a big difference right there, because the wood you're going to be measuring for your credits is heavy. And you're selling tons of wood. You're not selling board feet of lumber. So you got to remember, think in terms of carbon credits is tons of carbon. So look at the weight of the wood, what kind of species you have. The newer project we're working on is predominantly 30-year-old redwood, second growth redwood stands, and redwood's pretty light. And the initial work that we've done on the modeling is it's coming up short from what they thought it should be. So we're back to square one determining what to do. Inventory is the one big item that you have more control over than anything else. And you can change inventory, you can add plots, you can work with it to help increase the number of credits you're going to get. But keep in mind that inventory is expensive. We've done it different ways with different projects. We have fixed plots, we have variable radius plots on other projects. We prefer the fixed radius plots, and I'm not going to get into the whole technical details of the inventory work and the plot measurements themselves, but my the Yurok tribal expert is back there that did all the on-the-ground work. Vance, raise your hand. If you want to know about on-the-ground inventory work, he's the man to talk to. And then the plots themselves, most of them are nested plots with 37-foot radius, 17-foot radius inside plot, and then a 12-foot radius. And everything in those nested plots gets measured, or different things get measured in different plots. And it's a very time-consuming process. And our average production is about 2 plots per day, maybe 3 if we don't have any access issues. But we spend it takes a lot of time just to get to the project area. It takes a lot of time to move between plots, and it takes a lot of time to actually do the plots. When we first started out in our inventory work, we got into this and we said, let's establish a inventory crew. Let's build up a crew. And we started off with a 3-person crew to do all our inventory work, because each project's got to be re-inventoried at certain intervals. Plus you throw in the CFI plots and we got more work to do. So we started off with a 3-person crew, and then after a while, one of them got sick and wasn't there for a week, and we looked at the production and it was the same. So now we have a 2-person crew, because cut our cost by 30%, but most of the time we realized we're just getting to the plots and getting from plot to plot. Uh-oh, Brian's giving me the fingers. So cost per plot, upwards of $300 a plot. We have not yet been able to get it below that. And we've done several of these different project inventories. The next one we're looking at probably around $400 per plot. It's not cheap. These are all permanent plots. They're, staked, monumented. You got to be able to reestablish them. We got GIS layers. They're on, GPS devices. We know where they are. As we said before, the inventory has to be every 12 years. One thing to keep in mind, though, when you're talking about 12 years, if you sell credits in that intervening period, you may have to re-inventory just to verify that you do have credits there, because ARB is not going to issue any credits without verification. And also, if you want to do some modeling and you need that updated information, you have to have, your inventory has to be no less than 2 years old to do your modeling to get verified. If you have an old inventory, it's not gonna count. So consider the overall cost, and precision is the key. If you want a lot of credits to be issued, then you want to get that confidence deduction, they call it. You want to get it close to 0. Closer to 0, the more credits you're going to get. But the more plots you take, the more it's going to cost you. These are just a quick map of how many plots we have. You can see the phase 2 area had the random plots. Phase 1 is 120 plots scattered on a grid. The CKGG is 679. What you see here is actually just the pre-inventory plots. This is what it looks like for the CKGG project as far as the plot locations. And this is one of the things I talked about, with the outside developer. They're going to make the decision how many plots to install so that they can maximize their credits, which is fine. I don't blame them for doing that. That's a good business practice, and they do it, and they were a good company to work with. But the other thing, if they're going to make decisions that may affect you, is look out here on the east side. There's a little peninsula out there in the project area that it's been deleted. They deleted that without, we didn't even know about it until after the fact. And it was deleted because it's low site 5, and it doesn't grow much carbon. So it was bringing down the carbon inventory amounts, so they just deleted it. And now I got 200 acres at low site that I don't know what I'm going to do with. Land status, all of our projects are on fee lands. The tribe has about 2,500 acres of allotments. My recommendation, like I told our tribal council, and they wanted to put these under some kind of project, allotments are just too many problems. You got fractured ownerships. On top of that, if you do a project on the allotment land, somebody has to be responsible for that project, what they call the offset project operator. Somebody has to be in charge to sign on the bottom line. It's going to be hard to find somebody. And all of the other problem is all of the forest owners, all of them, 100% have to sign off on the project. That's probably going to be hard to do with allotments. I have enough trouble just with allotment timber sales. So in trust land, we don't have any of our project areas on trust land because the tribe only has about 3,800 acres of trust. And the products we get off of that trust land are high quality timber products and they're worth more than the carbon. So that's something to talk about amongst, when you get back home is, and this is what I talk about when we say high valued forest products is logs like this versus carbon credits. What do you want to do? But either way, you're going to have to look at the baseline. I just want to skip over this because everybody's already mentioned the baseline, except that the carbon stocks cannot fall below that baseline. This is the graph of the baseline for our phase 1 project. As you can see on the bottom is the years of modeling and then tons of carbon. It's actually starts off at 1.2 million tons. And this, you have to stay between the red and the blue. The red is the baseline, you can't fall below it. That's what was established as common practice. And in this case, it was based on the previous owner's forest management regime, which was short rotation clear cuts, 50-year-old even age silviculture. And we are now doing selective harvesting, if we harvest at all. But you can either, in this area in between the red and the blue, you can either do timber harvesting, or you can sell carbon credits, or you can do a little bit of both. We have it planned out where we can either cut 4 million feet in this area, on this graph, or we can sell the credits, 69,000 tons per acre or per year. So it's a matter of just deciding which is better and what you need for that year. But we plan to do both. We can also we got provisions, we can do prescribed fires, cultural burns. We have a plan in the works. We're going to do a prairie restoration in our area, in this area, but we can do a lot of this stuff. It's in our forest management plan. We just have to stay above the baseline. So you need to know what it takes to fall below it, because if you fall below it, you have to pay it back. And I don't want to have to go to a council and say, can you give me, a couple $1 million to pay back these credits because we harvested $800,000 worth of timber. So, other issues real quickly is, and everybody's already said this, the annual reporting, your project verification. You have to re-verify every 6 years. You got reversal ratings and carbon credits are set aside for that. Development time, ARB is saying 18 months. In reality, for us, it's been at least 3 years to get things through, from start to finish, to where you get credits issued. Sovereign waiver immunity, that's a requirement. ARB spells that out very clearly. They want that. So that's a council issue they have to struggle with. And our council struggled with it in the initial beginnings. There was a lot of people against it, but they came to a consensus. And the buffer pool. So I'm going to end it right there.